So what if I told you there is a loophole on your flood insurance?
And has discovered that the federal government can actually deny your flood insurance claim even if you've done everything right.
Could you believe that if you were paying flood insurance, thinking you're covered, and your house gets flooded, that they might not cover it? Well, this is one of the scariest thoughts for us as a Floridian, or anybody who lives in a flood zone, that the federal government might have created a situation that you will not get paid for your flood insurance.
Loophole that could cause your national flood insurance policy to be worthless when you need it.
So when I saw this article, when I saw this news clipping, I was baffled. Living in Pensacola, where we get flooded all the time. We have all these hurricanes. State of Florida, South Florida, you get flooded a lot. Random events, and some of them man-made problems, you can get flooded. And you try to carry flood insurance, you know, especially if you have a mortgage and you live in a flood zone like AE or whatever, they will require you to have flood insurance. You get this flood insurance only to find out when you do flood that they're not going to cover it.
As it stands now, when you buy a national flood policy, there is no way for you to check to make sure that you will be fully covered.
That's pretty wild. Well, it happened to this lady in the state of Florida. She got flooded, and they told her that they're not going to pay,
causing nearly $100,000 in damages to their house.
It was the second or third surge. It was at 3 a.m. in the morning. Water started coming in.
Jensen says she thought they were protected by an $8,600 national flood insurance policy administered by FEMA.
If you're an insurance expert, comment down below on this. I want to hear the discord of this. And when you go to buy a piece of property, as a real estate agent, I help people buy property all the time. Flood zones, all types of different properties. When you go to buy a property, you do not really know too much about the previous owner.
But weeks after an adjuster started their claim, it was denied. They were told the previous homeowner filed a claim for the same damaged materials in December 2023 and did not make repairs, leaving them on their own as if they never even bought a flood policy.
You know, there's a disclosure saying that, was this property ever flooded previously? Well, you know, people lie. Sometimes people don't know. Sometimes people inherit the property, don't know. Sometimes there was some situation where there's not a lot of information known. So you get a home inspection, hopefully to find out if a house has ever flooded, been on fire, things that are wrong with it. But sometimes that's tough to decipher too. And when you look at some of these sellers' disclosures, especially on properties that are not as much, like the value is not high enough for litigation to actually sue. I'm not a lawyer, but I'll tell you how this stuff seems to work itself out. Is that on some of these properties, you know, whether they'll say the damage is $10 or $15 or $20,000, the court costs and the litigation is just not going to happen. So people know that, and they fudge on these disclosures. So when you buy your flood insurance and you're thinking you're covered, and then you find out that the house had flooded previously and there was a claim, which we all know claims stick on you like a felony. You can't get rid of these claims. They always find them out. And your house had a claim on it previously, or it shows some guilty mind of your house flooding a lot. And then to find out that they had a previous claim and that stove you have in your house was on that claim and it was never fixed out, or it was never changed out. Well, sorry, we're not going to insure you.
Even down to the appliances that have the same serial number from the prior loss claim.
The kicker is there's no way to be proactive. FEMA confirms to Better Call Bankin that it does not require policyholders prove they made repairs, and new homeowners cannot check to make sure they did. FEMA has issued over 1.7 million NFIP policies in Florida, with more than $400 billion in total coverage. There's no way to know how many of those policy holders would be denied damages because of unrepaired prior loss claims.
Which is wild. I mean, there's no way to know sometimes. Like here in Florida, we have Citizens Insurance, and they are always changing the rules. I mean, they'll change the rules mid-month, okay? And so all of a sudden, you're not covered and you thought you were covered. There seems to be a major issue with insurance and how these politicians and the lobbyists work to where they can just finagle this insurance, change the law. All of a sudden, people that have paid hard-earned money at the previous part of the year or the early part of the year is now like not getting what they thought they were, because these insurance companies, they can cancel you on a whim, they can change the rules, they can do all kinds of stuff.
Traditionally, homeowners insurance requires you prove you made the repairs your policy paid you to make. But a FEMA spokesperson confirmed FEMA does not require this for NFIP policies.
Because people need to know that there is a loophole, that FEMA can do this, that this is possible. Because when you have all of your life's belongings in your house and you wake up and it's, you know, hip deep in your living room of water, and your life is washed away in front of your eyes, well, that's a terrible feeling.
The spokesman wrote in an email, quote, prospective policy holders cannot request the claim history from FEMA due to privacy requirements for a structure they do not own.
And it's a bait and switch. It's crazy. And whoever's responsible for this, they need to fix it. And if they don't, well, that's criminal. Okay, there's a difference between civil and criminal, and insurance like to hide behind civil. But if you falsified something to the insurance company, they would put you in jail. But they can hide behind this shield, they and the government, and that's not criminal. Okay, like how is there not a banker's clause in the bottom of this policy saying if this happens that we're not going to pay out? People would go find out. People would go find out who owned the property previously. Or a transference of these flood policies would be great. And I have heard of that happening. But, you know, usually you don't know who anybody that before you, what kind of policy they had. You know, there's like, I was at a closing table the other day and this happened and we were like, hey, can you go to the next room and ask them about their flood policy or their homeowner's insurance? And usually they'll come back and be like, well, we have this. And then you call the insurance company and they're like, well, we're not going to accept that. You've got to pay the stepped up premium or you got to pay a new policy. And it's always high, like gives them the ability to raise the premium every time the property changes hands. And we know how that works. And it's crazy.
Florida law requires home sellers to disclose defects to houses that could impact the value of that home. I'm currently going through the disclosure statements provided during this sale, but Jensen tells me that she would have never bought this house if she knew that there were unrepaired flood damage there. In fact, she says that the home passed inspection and the inspector did not mention any flood damage at all.
You know, the government wants you to have privacy. And it's like paying taxes. We know how much you owe, but we're not going to tell you. We're going to let you tell us. And then when you're wrong, we're going to throw you in jail or we're going to fine you. Why not just tell me how much I owe? Why not just tell me there was a claim on this policy or on this house, you know, a year or two ago, 5 years ago? That'd be great to actually know in the discovery process. Why doesn't the city have a notation on the property, just like a permit, that's saying, hey, there was a claim on this property. It was X amount of dollars. It was in this year, and it was for that. Like, you know, over a certain threshold. Like, they know that you changed out the water heater. They know that you changed out the toilet or bought new doors because they wanted to charge you for a permit, but they won't tell you if the house flooded. And yes, I want to make it very clear that, yes, I know you can look up the flood zone. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in regards to a previous claim. We usually always know that there is a ability for the property to flood. You know, the type of flood zone, X, AE, etc., etc. What I'm talking about is I want to know if there was a major claim on the house. We know as we go on in real estate that all these insurance companies are going to start talking to each other. They're going to have a history on these properties. And if I can't see that history when I'm doing my due diligence on the property, well, maybe that's a problem. Because insurance is such a huge, huge part of real estate. Especially if you own a mortgage or you have a mortgage, you have to have that type of insurance. Well, when you self-insure or you own the property outright, you might not need that insurance. You can pick and choose what you want. But for the large majority of real estate owners, it is a big deal. No, I'm not an insurance agent. I'm just pointing these things out that maybe you can ask your insurance agent. And I know during the due diligence process, you should probably talk to an insurance agent about the insurance on the property. I'm pointing out that there is an issue and obviously it's causing a problem. how do you get in front of that? So I'm asking you, I want to ask everybody out there, what do you think about this? What would you do? And maybe we can all learn from each other in the comment section to fix this problem or to not run into this problem. What would you do? And let's go from there. I mean, isn't that common sense? The insurance company knows, but they're not going to tell you until it's too late. And you know, in the state of Florida, some of these houses are bought for cash, and you don't have to really deal with an insurance company. And then you got to, you know, find out after the fact, or you buy a policy and you don't find out for 30, 45 days, and then it's too late. That's wild. There's just no excuse to not know as in this situation. There's just no excuse for you to get to that point and them not tell you anything. Like there's just no excuse for that. When you do your due diligence and you do talk to insurance companies, usually it goes something like this. Hey, I need insurance on this property. Here's your 4-point wind mitigation. And they'll say, okay, cool. I see you got hurricane clips. So you got this. I see you're, you know, in a flood zone, blah, 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 blah. Here's your insurance. Here's your policy. They never really ever, I don't think I've ever heard an agent say, hey, in 2012, there was a claim on this property, and it was for $4,336. It included 2 stoves, serial number, blah, 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 blah. It included a refrigerator. It included all the sheetrock. It included this contractor, and this was the guy that pulled the permit, and it was paid on this date. Never once did they ever say anything like that. What do you think? I can guarantee you 99% of the time, the previous owner is not going to tell you. For one thing, it would open up a whole can of worms especially for litigation as far as you knew, okay? And it's gonna drive down the price of some of these properties if they go ahead and tell. You know, like, yeah, that probably should be disclosed, but I can tell you they know, and this is not me speaking here, this is how the situation is usually going to go down. They know if they tell you that house got flooded and it came up to the doorknobs, that property is going to be worth a lot less. And you're going to have to squeeze it out of them. And that's what these disclosures are supposed to do. But 90% of these disclosures, hashtag don't sue me, usually say I don't know. Because there's a section on it that says yes, no, or I don't know. It's going to say, I don't know. It's the same way when they say, was there any unpermitted work? It's always, I don't know. And if you ever ask a flipper or a wholesaler or any type of property flipper, he's going to be like, I don't know, never occupied it, so I'm not doing a seller's disclosure. That is wild too. You will see a lot of these real estate deals on the MLS with no seller's disclosure. And you go, well, hey, you got a seller's disclosure? And they will always say, well, we never occupied, so we don't know. But we redid everything in the house from the ground to the top of the roof, but we don't know. You know, like they will have owned the property for 20 years, remodeled everything in the house, tore it all the way down the studs and back up, so they say. And it'll say that on the MLS, but then when it comes to the seller's disclosure, it'll be, we're not going to do one because we never occupied it. What is that? You know? Like it should be mandatory, a seller's disclosure must be on the MLS. Or it must be done before closing. Just like a lead paint disclosure, just like a lot of things. You should not be able to say, well, we pulled 25 permits, but we don't know. It's wild. These politicians will always issue some type of statement. And it'll be the most generic thing you've ever heard. And it's like, so are you going to do something? Like, do you have a plan? Have you ever bought, sold real estate, owned real estate, but you're going to make a law about real estate and how to govern condos and these really in-depth subjects? Let me tell you, condos, HOAs are in-depth situations. There's a lot to it. And as I've been making these videos, people have been emailing me their issues, their situations. And it is wild to hear some of these situations and how bad off some people are. And it really makes me feel passionate about this. And that politicians are so behind the curve, and they will wait until an actual housing crisis happens to ever fix these problems. And it came to the front desk, you know, ages ago. You know, I remember when my dad had a situation, and as a veteran with the VA, almost thrown out on the street for medical care when he was supposed to have it. And I called the politicians, I called the senator's office, and I got an auto dial. and said that they weren't in because of, you know, certain situations. Never got a call back. And that's when I realized that if you're waiting for the federal government to come solve your problem, you're going to be waiting a long time. And it's sad to think that. Because you know what? They're going to sit in their little gated community and they're going to be fine. And that should infuriate people. So what do y'all think about this? Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.